Okay, thank you very much. My name is Lisa Goodwin, and I work at the DuPage County Circuit Clerk's Office. And this presentation today is on changes to the record-keeping manual, which will affect how cases get filed in clerks' systems across the state of Illinois. And these changes are taking effect on January 1st of 2022. Okay. So before we get into the fun stuff, just a couple little housekeeping slides. As everyone should know, the clerk's website is www.18thjudicial.org, which provides the links to the Zoom hearings, the court forms, and the court date availability calendar, which is up to date for civil matters. And the reason for that, the reason why I call that to your attention is because there's some important dates that you need to know coming up. First of all, the Judicial Conference puts on their judges training classes they did not do it in 2020. I don't know if they did it in 2021, but we are now having the 2022 EdCon this year, and those are going to be from the week of April 4th to April 8th. And the week of June 13th to June 17th. And half the courtrooms in DuPage County are going to close one week and the other half are going to close the second week. So when it comes down to the April and June dates, please check the court availability calendars when you're looking for return dates or motion dates to make sure that your courtrooms are going to be open when you need them. The second really important date is a state-wide date that all electronic filing in the state of Illinois will be shut down at noon on Thursday, December 30th. That includes criminal e-filing, civil e-filing. It includes anything filed through Odyssey and everything filed through I2File. All electronic filing is going to shut down at noon on Thursday. So if you have a deadline, you got to get it filed before then. Or you can come into the clerk's office with paper, the old-fashioned way, because the state of Illinois is shutting it down at noon on Thursday. And that's in order to roll in these changes to the record-keeping procedures that we're going to talk about. And the last date is really the most important, which is the holiday. Normally, the clerk's office and the court is open in DuPage County on New Year's Eve. But today, New Year's Eve, or this year, New Year's Eve is going to be the observed New Year's Day holiday. So we are going to be closed on Friday, December 31st. Okay, so now into the record-keeping manual changes. One thing that they took the opportunity to do when they were releasing a new copy of the manual is to define what the secured access vocabulary means. A lot of times you will see in a state statute that the legislature will use the word sealed when in practice they really mean impounded. So there's been a lot of confusion across the state in terms of what vocabulary is ascribed to what level of access. So obviously expunged, if something is expunged, no one has access to it at all. There is a couple very rare, very uncommon scenarios that might provide access to an expunged record in terms of Homeland Security, but all those requests have to come through a judge. And then I would also just like for any of the attorneys out there who are handling expungements, that a recent public act now allows for a Class 4 prostitution offense to be eligible to be expunged. Sealed is a very common word that, like I said, the legislature is very fond of using. If a record is sealed, only the judge can access a sealed record. However, the judge can give you an order that would allow the clerk's office to provide you a copy of a document or to unseal the record. Impounded is the most common level of security that we have. An impounded case or an impounded document, the parties of the case, the attorneys on the case, they are allowed to access those impounded records, along with what we call court adjacent personnel, like guardian ad litem's, DCFS, and the sheriff to effect service, for example, in order of protection cases, impounded until the order is served. But the sheriff has access to it in order to actually do the service. Then we have a new level of security now, which is called, the DuPage County, the DUC system is calling it court protected. We already had this level of security implemented in a very minor way, and so we kind of kept that vocabulary for our own convenience. We're calling it court protected, and the record keeping manual is calling it confidential. That means that the judges and the filing party and the filing party's attorney is granted access to view the document, but the opposing party is not. And we would use that occasionally for, mental health records or something where one ex-spouse, for example, would not want, one spouse would not want their other spouse to see the results of any kind of mental health exam. So we can now secure a document to be visible just to the party that filed it. So the fun part about the record keeping manual changes is the case category changes. There are quite a few of these. All case categories are now 2 letters. So wherever we used to have a 1-letter case category, like a J, an F, an L, or a P, those are all changing to 2-letter case categories now. So a juvenile case is going to be a JV, a family case is going to be an FA. Law and probate now have 2-character case categories as well. They also took the opportunity to create new case categories. We have not had new case categories in a long time. We had one called the civil law violation for minor cannabis offenses. We had that a few years ago. So thank goodness we figured out how to add a new case category to our DUC system back then, because we're well equipped to add these. So the new civil case categories are going to be an eviction case is now going to be an EV case. A foreclosure is an FC. Guardianship has split out from underneath the probate umbrella and is now going to be called a GR. There's now a governmental corporation, which has simply been renamed from municipal corporation. So the MC cases, which are not very common, are going to be called GC cases. And then another big change is the split the division of the miscellaneous remedy category into a civil miscellaneous remedy and a criminal miscellaneous remedy. So the civil MR cases are still going to be called MRs, and the criminal miscellaneous remedy cases are going to be called MX. And I have another slide on that getting into more detail in a minute. The second major change is that the dissolution category has now been divided in 2. We will now be having dissolution with minor children as a DC case type, and dissolution without minor children as a DN case type. There are also a couple new criminal case categories. The traffic case category, formerly known as TRs, has been also split in 2. And now we have a major traffic or a misdemeanor traffic case category, which is going to be an MT. So those are all misdemeanor offenses in a traffic stop. And then the TR is remaining, but now a TR will signify that the case only contains petty or business class counts. We also have a new case category here called quasi-criminal or QC, which I have more information on in a minute, but those are violations that are that are charged outside of the Illinois Vehicle Code. The remaining criminal case categories have not changed. So we still have the CF, CM, DT, DV, CV, and OV, and those are still all the same. So I also want to mention to you that the DV, or the domestic violence case category, is something that DuPage County has used for a long time, and that was added to the statewide case categories. So while you guys might be very comfortable with DV cases now, the rest of the state, that's new for them. So the surrounding counties, I believe McHenry might have used the DV case category, but that's new to the rest of the state. And then I should mention that we are not renaming old cases, even if they're active. So for a while those cases that have been filed prior to 2022, those cases are still going to have the old case types. So now you are going to have a mix of case categories in the case numbering system. And hopefully this isn't a surprise to anybody, but Cook County is not going to be using these new case categories on January 1st. Their implementation has been delayed for this. So if you file an eviction in Cook, you're still going to get an L or an LM case category, but anywhere else in the state of Illinois, you're going to get an EV case category. So nothing is changing in Cook County from the way it stands today. They are not going to go to these new case categories. So I thought I'd throw that in there because I know a lot of people also practice in Cook. Okay, so the dissolution categories now, the DC and the DN, they are each going to contain the same options for dissolving a marriage, a civil union, or invalidity or legal separation. They'll just be four different case types in each of those categories. The eviction and foreclosure categories are going to each contain commercial and residential options. And if you weren't already aware, please note that the additional tiered foreclosure filing fees have been removed. So there's no longer a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 additional filing fee on foreclosure cases. The guardianship cases, self-explanatory, are going to contain guardianship issues. And that just leaves decedents, estate matters in the probate case category. And debt new cases, which are not very common, those were in the law division and now they are moving to chancery. The criminal case categories, DUI cases now have expanded slightly to include snowmobile and boating OUI cases. Those were formerly considered CV or conservation categories. Major traffic, like I mentioned, are misdemeanor violations of the Illinois Vehicle Code, and TRs are petty and business class violations of the Illinois Vehicle Code. This QC category, by far the most common one that we see is the child safety restraint, which is 25/4. That is not in the vehicle code. So the QC cases are going to be petty and business class offenses that are outside of the vehicle code. So tobacco fine for minors, some Secretary of State licensing violations for car dealerships, etc. So we don't expect to see too many of those, but child safety restraint is by far the most common. Here's a slide, and this information is available for download at the DCVA website, so don't have to, try to read this too fast. Here's a listing of the civil MR case types and the criminal MR case types. So if you're looking for one or the other and you're not sure where it is, try the other one. But here's the case type categorizations within the miscellaneous categories. The other thing that's changing, which doesn't necessarily affect you from the attorney perspective, but just so you know, we are having legal status changes of a case. So an active case is clearly an open case. That has not changed. But now a case will go inactive if the case has gone into a diversion or specialty court in the criminal division, if there has been any assignment for deferred prosecution, or if there's an interlocutory appeal, or if someone is found temporarily unfit for trial. Those cases are going to go inactive. Cases with outstanding warrants are going to go inactive after 60 days, and that is a change from the 30 days that we're doing right now. Then once a case has been inactive, it will go to reactive if a defendant is removed from a specialty court, or if they have been restored to fitness, or if they have been picked up on their warrant. Now you're going to see a reactive case legal status. A case is going to be closed. The only change to that is that in a criminal case now, it's going to be closed upon sentencing rather than closing upon a finding of guilty or not guilty. Well, actually, a finding of not guilty will close the case, but if there's a finding of guilty, it's going to be closed at the sentence date. And then the reinstated legal status is something that DuPage County used to use a long, long time ago. And that has been brought back by the record keeping manual to mean that a case has been reinstated out of a closed status. So if there's a return of a reviewing court mandate, or if there's been an order to vacate a final judgment or dismissing a conviction, then the case is going to be reinstated. So hopefully those are clear, but that's what those mean. And then here's just a picture of how the case status diagram works. So I see we have a question in the chat and a question in the Q&A. So the chat, oh, Barb actually put a link to the reference guide, which I'll show you in a minute. She put that in the chat window. And a question that if the e-filing is shutting down at noon on 12:30, does this mean that we are unable to submit e-filings between noon on the 30th and January 3rd? That is correct. I believe right now the state is planning on having e-filing down for the whole weekend, reopening on Monday, January 3rd. There's, I'm sure, a chance that it could come back live over the weekend, but they are not committing to that or a time. So the e-filing is going to be down for I would assume that it would be down for the whole weekend. And if it comes back up, I think we just got lucky. And another question, how will guardianships cases be classified, active, inactive, or closed once a guardian is appointed? Yes, once a plenary guardian is appointed, then the guardianship case will be closed. And then, yes, annual accountings and reports will still be required just as normal. So, okay. And okay, I think we've addressed the questions in the chat for now. Okay, next slide. There's, like I said, there's some procedural changes that we're going to take the responsibility for in the clerk's office, but just to make you aware of them, again, the closing activity on a criminal case is going to happen at sentencing. The deferred prosecution, which is commonly on ordinance violation cases, but I do see them on, other misdemeanors, minor misdemeanors. Those are going to change the case status to inactive, and a deferred prosecution is going to now require a return date to determine compliance prior to dismissing the charges. Same with temporarily unfit for trial. That is going to change a case status to inactive, and it's going to require a return date. Once someone is found permanently unfit for trial, that will close the case. And again, vacating a previously dismissed case is going to put that in a reinstated status. Another change that the clerk's office is going to do is we now have to record if a bench trial was actually held. So you're going to see that now on the docket sheet, that because we have to report to the state of Illinois if we've held a certain number of jury trials or bench trials. So now if a plea agreement is reached prior to the bench trial, we now have to, there's no way right now for us to determine in ducks if a bench trial actually happened or not. So we're going to be recording that specifically on a case. I mentioned the warrant going inactive after 60 days. And another big change procedurally for the office is that an order of protection must be issued an OP case number now. And it's going to be cross-referenced to the associated civil or criminal case according to what it is. So there's a couple reasons for that, and I have another slide with more detail. But if you walk into court now with a paper order of protection proceeding, the judge is going to then have to prepare a paper order, and the clerk is going to have to manually instantiate an OP case to put the petition and any subsequent orders on the OP case. So you are very strongly encouraged to use our electronic order of protection application, because that eliminates all the manual work from our side and from the judge's side. So for more detail, the reason why we're doing this is because the order of protection and any subsequent actions on the order, they survive the associated case. So the dissolution case can be closed, the criminal felony or domestic violence case can be closed, but the order of protection still lives on. So we need to start reporting on that separately from the underlying cases. The next change is that a denial of an order of protection or the granting of an emergency or any kind of plenary order, those are now closing activities on the case. So if you were to have the clerk, or if the clerk were to enter a denial of an order of protection on a D case, that would end up closing the D case, which is not what we want. So actions now and activities on an order of protection now have to be performed in the OP case. So on the associated cases, then we are going to be reporting on post-judgment activity. So if there's post-judgment action on a divorce case, we're going to have to report that to the state of Illinois, but we're going to have to report any subsequent activity on an OP separately. So now is the time we have to divide and stop the practice of filing for an order of protection directly into a civil case or a criminal case. Now, the subsequent hearings on an order of protection, so if an emergency order gets denied and then it's scheduled for a hearing, the hearing is going to go into the associated cases courtroom, and the judge who's hearing that felony or hearing that dissolution case is also going to have the hearing on the order of protection. So if you did go to 4016 with someone on an emergency basis, that'll be handled. The emergency hearing will be in 4016, and then that OP case, which got created, will be cross-referenced to the affiliated case, and it will go to the other courtroom. And that was the end of the slideshow. I will show you really quickly before I take the outstanding question out there. Here is a quick reference guide that we've put together. These are some of the, and it's not all inclusive because there's just not enough space, but the most common case types within the case categories now with the changes to the record keeping manual. And then I also have, so if you print this front and back, it'll only be on one piece of paper, but here's a list now of all the civil case categories, the criminal case categories, and the 3 juvenile case categories, along with their new 2-letter abbreviation. So hopefully you'll find that interesting to hand out in your office, but that'll be also downloadable from the DCBA website, and Barb put the link in the chat. So we have a couple questions. How will bankruptcies be handled? That is a great question. A federal bankruptcy will put the case in inactive status. However, the judge has to order or at least alert the clerk that a federal bankruptcy has been filed, because the clerk doesn't know. So the judge is going to order a case to go inactive in the event of a federal bankruptcy, and then the judge will order the case reactive when the federal bankruptcy concludes. So that's something that's going to be handled. It can't be handled automatically by ducks. The judge is going to have to order that. So good question. Are there any changes in the law division? Not entire. The only law division changes is the L now is going to be called LA, obviously in the case category. And now debt new is moving over to law. I think that was one that was generally left pretty much alone, aside from those two fairly minor changes to the law division. What will determine if a civil accident case is law, magistrate, or arbitration? That is a good question, and I actually do not know. I think I actually don't know. You might have to ask somebody in either the chief judge's office or Kimberly runs the arbitration program. I do not know the differences between those two. And just to confirm, foreclosure cases the case number will be FC instead of CH, and yes, that is exactly correct. Cases that are filed prior to December 30th are still going to be CH, but now they are all going to change over to be called FC cases. So. And I was hoping this was going to take 30 minutes, and it is now 12:27. So if anybody has any more open questions, please put them in the Q&A list. Feel free to download the slide presentation and the quick reference guide from the DCBA website. And we have another question. An OP will no longer be consolidated into another case and will stay separate. Is that correct? That is correct. We are not going to consolidate the cases. We are going to cross-reference them. So if you are familiar with looking in case history, that you will see a new button appearing in the future to easily access the cross-referenced cases. So we will not be consolidating them anymore. You will now, with the OP case now being associated to many civil or criminal cases, when you are in the courtroom and you pull up your call list for orders, now you will see a CF and an OP for that same defendant. You will see those now on the call list. So they are going to travel along like as a group. And the Cook County slide was not included in the printout. That is correct. I actually just learned this morning that Cook County was not going to be implementing the 2022 record keeping manual changes. So I did throw that in there at the last minute. Will there be any changes to filing fees in 2022? I believe so. There's an increase in the law library fee that is planned for civil cases. However, I believe they are just starting to discuss that matter with the county board, so it is not set in stone at this time. And will mechanics lien foreclosure be FC or CH? And I don't know that one off the top of my head, but I apologize. I might have it handy really quick. I think it's still going to be a CH because it is definitely not in the FC category. Yes, mechanics lien foreclosure is still going to be a chancery case category. Good question. And so to confirm, all these counties are making these changes except for Cook. That is correct. These are statewide changes for every county in the state of Illinois. So, and that is, I do apologize for not knowing about Cook County until this morning, but that is when I found out. And Barb has put a link to the presentation slides. And then actually, Barb, we can update the Cook County, the presentation with the Cook County slide if you like, but.
Sure, we can do that.
So yes, we can make the Cook County slide available.
Did you see that last slide
Oh,
or last question?
Right. All of these changes apply to all counties effective January 1st, 2022. So this coming January. Except for Cook, yes. And like I said, it looks to be cases that are going to be filed effective January 3rd. Okay. Any more questions?
It doesn't appear to be. We will make this a recording this presentation available on the DuPage County Bar Association YouTube page. So if you want to review this again, you can go to that YouTube page. That will be done probably the beginning of next week. And there was one more question.
There's one more question. What happens if you file on January 3rd under the old case type? It will not be available. You will not be, for an initial case filing, you will not even have the option to choose the old case type. Assuming the cutover was handled properly. But you won't even be able to select it from either Odyssey or I2 file. So hopefully that will not happen. You will still be able to make subsequent filings on cases that exist prior to January. What are the tiers for foreclosure on the spreadsheet? There are no more tiers for foreclosure. So I'm not sure what spreadsheet you are looking at. Oh, I'm sorry. I have my spreadsheet up. That is, I apologize for that. I was looking at mechanics lien foreclosures. That is an old spreadsheet. So those tiers have gone away. Those have been removed. No, I apologize. So old case numbers stand, and we use those when filing through Odyssey. That is correct. So if you have a dissolution case that you have, that you are working on today in 2021, you still enter that same 2021 D 12345 case number on subsequent filings in 2022. But it's only for cases that you file after January that the case number will be either a DC or a DN.